All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you for catching this interview. This is something that's a little bit different than the regular week-to-week New Japan updates with news, comments, speculation, tinfoil hat stuff that we like to cover on this channel. I wanted to do this for a really long time, and I finally found somebody that was willing to partake in this unique interview experience where I want to show slice of life people from all different walks of life that enjoy New Japan Pro Wrestling. And for the sake of keeping kayfabe alive and the Google vanity searches to a minimum, I am inviting on Avery Maggs. Thank you for participating in this interview today.
Thank you very much for having me, Steve. It's great to be here. I'm really excited.
So you have probably couldn't ask for a better interview right out the gate for your own personal experience going to Japan. You're currently living there. So why don't you kind of just explain for everybody how you pretty much landed in Japan, what part of Japan you're in, just to kind of get that out of the gate.
Sure. I have been in and out of Japan for almost a decade at this point. I started off in a tiny, tiny little town, which a lot of people probably have never heard of. It's called Tokushima, down on Shikoku Island. It's not even the main part of Japan. After a few years, I found myself in Tokyo, which is where I am now. I've been here for about 4 or 5 years. I can't even remember at this point. But I came primarily for work initially as a teacher. If there's anybody out there listening who is currently in Japan, you guys probably know the feels. Came here as an instructor looking for work experience. Since then, I've branched into a lot of other freelancey type work. So I do a little bit of teaching still, but it's branched more into performance related stuff, singing, acting, and martial arts related stuff. Yep. And I'm currently in Tokyo.
So it's kind of sounds one way or another you would have eventually gravitated towards, you know, acting and martial arts, New Japan Pro Wrestling. How did you discover that while you were there? Because conversations we've had before is you literally were in Japan and discovered New Japan Pro Wrestling. You didn't really know too much about it from where you came before.
Yes. So I've actually been doing martial arts and acting since I was a child, which means, at least from the MMA perspective, it means that I was never allowed to watch pro wrestling. It was always a thing. I was aware it existed. It was one of those things on TV that you were not allowed to watch. You change the channel. We don't watch that fake stuff. So the majority of my life, I had a very one-sided and arguably incorrect view of what pro wrestling actually is. So let's jump to 2019, January. My brother and his fiance came to visit me in Tokyo, and my brother is also a long-term martial arts practitioner who at some point back in Canada, he had fallen down this rabbit hole of pro wrestling, and he had spent the last year texting me stuff, trying to get me to watch stuff. And I'm like, dude, I have no idea what you're talking about. You're sending me videos of Brock Lesnar. I don't need to see Brock Lesnar hamming it up for a camera. Like, this is super cringe. I can't, like, what are you doing? Stop sending me these videos. But he came to Tokyo and he's like, we're going to this Wrestle Kingdom thing. And I was like, why? Why are you taking me to this? So we got the tickets. I distinctly remember being in like a terrible mood that day. I was like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to go. My brother, his fiance, and I got onto the train, went to the Tokyo Dome, and watched Wrestle Kingdom 13. And that was literally my very first wrestling event, my very first exposure to wrestling. But as soon as we were in the dome, I could feel the performance vibes, the entertainment vibes, the excitement of everybody there, all the t-shirts, all the cosplayers, all that kind of stuff. I was like, okay, what is this? And then I started paying attention. I basically just harassed my brother and annoyed the crap out of him for the entire event. Like, who's this guy? What is he doing? What is going on? There's a faction? Who are we cheering for? Is he good? I'm like, what's happening? Blah, 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 blah. That was me all during Wrestle Kingdom 13 up until the last couple of matches where I feel like the training wheels came off a little bit, and then suddenly I was really, really invested. And that was the beginning of the last 2 years or so. So I'm a very, very new fan, but I basically just dove down that rabbit hole and haven't looked back since then.
But I mean, that's a great crash course. You went to one of the major events. So, I mean, and Wrestle Kingdom's not like a short event either. It's not like going to like one of the smaller stops on a tour or anything like that. I mean, you're going to a show that's probably almost anywhere between like 3.5 to 4 hours. So,
Yeah.
you know, getting to the tail end there, you've had a lot of time to experience everything as they go through the motions. You know, they kind of have that mid intermission. So, you know, you had time to check everything out, and what a better event to go to than the Tokyo Dome.
Right. There's a prelim as well, which I actually, to this day, I'm not sure if those are broadcast on New Japan World, but yeah, all in total, if you get there at the doors open, it's about a 5-hour event. So it was a long day, but I could feel, yeah, the more we saw, the more the matches went along, it started to make a little bit more sense. And then I came home and immediately rewatched it from the video perspective and started analyzing things and just went from there.
Which is kind of like my own personal experience, because a lot of the times when they've come here stateside to Southern California, you know, you're in the height of watching it, being there, participating with the crowd. So you're kind of like, what did I just watch? Because you're like just in the thick of it. You're in the moment. You're experiencing everything. You know, you're cheering, you're booing, you're going all out for, like you said before, for your respective faction. You know, all things aside, I think we're kind of in the same faction. So,
you know, just a guess.
Possibly. We didn't have this was not predetermined. Like literally when we started this interview, we're like, oh, okay, well, we'll roll with it.
Should I change? I don't know. Should I, you know?
No, this isn't like you need to change kind of scenario. But I've been there before where you go back home and watch it just so because you're in the heat of the moment. You want to go back and actually watch it and absorb it for the storylines and who won, who lost, and moving forward. But it sounds like, you know, for this 2-year stint, if you will, you've experienced a lot. You've seen a lot of the change that's happened with New Japan closing the doors amidst pandemic. And then you've gone to a couple of the events in which they've reopened and they've started trickling in people back into the events with some of that welcome back, literally the Together Project, and then even the summer stadium events. Could you shed a little light on that?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the first events that I went to after they reopened was the lead up to the stadium event, actually, and which was the KOPW thingy, where they had all those unique singles matches leading up to that arena show. And at that time, as you're well aware, they decided to introduce, for instance, a cheering app, obviously in an attempt to try and find a way around the stipulations, I guess we can call them, of not allowing the audience to cheer. That's been a big thing in Japan. This has even trickled down into going to theme parks and whatnot. You're not allowed to cheer on the roller coasters. I think that's kind of gone viral. People have heard the phrase, please scream within your heart. That's a real thing over here in Japan. Like that was a serious statement that somebody decided to put out there. That is absolutely the approach that they're taking both in theme parks and in wrestling. So we are currently living in an age right now where you have to go to a wrestling show and not make a noise, not make a sound with your mouth, which for me is very hard to do. So they're trying to find other ways around keeping the interaction going to some extent. One of these attempts was to create a cheering app, which lasted all of a week. I am both sad and relieved to say. I feel, you know, a lot of sympathy there in terms of them trying to do the right thing, but it was a terrible idea. That thing was so annoying. They couldn't get the sound right. If anybody's, again, familiar with the Japanese flush toilets, that is exactly what it sounded like, but in cheering fashion. It was really obnoxious. And also just to disengage your audience in that way, like, oh, that was really good. I'm gonna look at my phone and, oh, that was great too. Like, people do enough of that over here anyway. Basically, it's really common for the audience to sit there like this I'm taking photos through the whole thing. I'm not really watching it. Yeah, so it was just exacerbated. So I'm really glad they ditched that idea. And I'm again, really happy that they did it so quickly. They didn't really let ego or anything get in the way. They were like, yeah, this isn't working, ditch. So that was good. One attempt, and that was really odd to see live as that unfolded. What else? Oh yeah, the stadium event was also very, very interesting. Wonderful experience, boiling hot outside. I think all things considered, I can imagine a lot of the performers would probably not want to do that again, considering it was the end of a Japanese summer outdoors. Like it was brutal. And also they had all the social distancing in place, but it kind of just made the stadium look really, really empty. I'm not sure how it looked on TV, because I actually didn't watch that one back, but when I was sitting there, it just felt kind of isolating. Like,
yeah, I mean,
so
they were
they
were doing some big pan shots, and it just looked like, you know, there was like maybe one person almost like every row over, so much. When they were really zooming out for some of the larger stuff, and then they were doing these really close zoom in shots of like the guys coming out of the dugouts, and you're just like, okay, this is a little contrast, it's a little wonky. So yeah, I everybody mentioned the heat, everything I could see from those. I know with the sound app, even Okada himself was like mocking it mid-ring, just like, really? This is it?
Ibushi as well. I remember Ibushi, you know, because he's one of the big guys who turns and tries to get the thing. And on the very first day when they introduced the sound app, he turned around and started doing this at the audience, like,
yeah, it's not
get
the Bullet
those thumbs
Club
going, everybody. I was like, buddy, the sarcasm though, I love it, but like, yeah, it was rough. Nobody was a fan, which led actually, and this is one thing I would love. It's really gimmicky, but I have a soft spot for it. I really like the idea of perhaps the wrestlers and the audience working together to find alternative ways of cheering. And I think it was Okada who kind of introduced this idea. It's on paper, it sounds really simple, but it could turn into a more complex kind of niche thing, is that some of the faces right now are creating these unique chants or clapping
stomp,
combos
clap,
and stuff. So
like,
yeah, exactly.
they're creating their own beat. So like they have their own group kind of slap, clap, whatever they want to do.
Yeah.
Like Okada.
And he adds a little stomp in there too. Yes, you go Okada stomp. Juice has just completely stolen Queen's theme, which I'm like, Blues Brothers Queen. Close enough.
Little tricklings of Boy George in there too.
You know?
It's like, dude, you are like Mr. 80s right now. He took that, embraced it, and ran with it. But I think that's what's kind of the neat thing about New Japan is that, you know, normally, you know, here stateside in North America in general, they're so worried about personas and characters that, you know, that worried about getting over in a larger landscape, that, you know, that they wouldn't roll the dice on a character like that. Like you wouldn't even have a character, and they've really toned him down to like almost like a simmer, like even Kushida with the whole time splitter thing, where it's like, dude, he loves Back to the Future. Let him roll with it. You know, just give him the DeLorean, have Taguchi dress up as Doc Brown, do the whole gambit, let him go through it. But now it's just like, okay, he's wearing a Toronto tuxedo. Like that's all it really is. He's wearing, you know, the jeans and the jacket and the vest. But, you know, but that's kind of what the neat thing is that they let the wrestlers express their own creativity and let it, you know, let them shoot to the moon within like the confines of the sandbox. It's all how you get yourself over and how you present yourself to the crowd.
Absolutely. And as someone with a theater background, that sounds really obnoxious, but I'm just being honest here. I've definitely been thinking about this quite a lot in the last couple of years. And like, why is this so addictive? Why am I so invested in these characters and in these events? And I really do chalk that up to the fact that the performers are given so much creative license. You get so invested in certain individuals, knowing that they are largely responsible for this persona, for this character, for these series of events that are taking place. They're not reading off a script necessarily. You know, I mean, who knows exactly all the inner workings? That's one of the beautiful things of the industry in general. But I really do think that hands-off approach and that creative liberty allows them to create these characters and these events that people can get really into and really invested in. There's a thread of sincerity in a lot of the performers and characters that is very endearing and very engaging. And I think as a performer, that's something that I can really relate to and really admire when I'm watching them out on the stage in the ring, as it were.
And with you living there and being there, I mean, I always try to explain this to people that are trying to get, started with New Japan, and try to understand that there is a difference between how their wrestlers are treated in society versus kind of how the WWE factory guys are perceived a little bit. I think that they're a little more respected as athletes, not necessarily like celebrities. Would you mind shedding some light on that too?
Sure. This is still something I'm currently trying to wrap my head around, but you're of course absolutely correct about that. I mean, you get guys like Minoru Suzuki is on the roster, everybody, like the literal founder of Pancrase. That's kind of a big thing. And what does he do when he goes out in the ring? He basically just Pancrases the crap out of everybody. Like, oh, hey, it's Suzuki doing an arm bar, doing a rear naked choke, as it's called in jiu-jitsu. They call it a sleeper hold or whatever. Names are a bit different, but I'm like, the technique is the same. He's doing it correctly. He's just doing it nicely. He's not actually breaking people's arms, but he's doing it correctly, which is very cool to see. As you mentioned in a previous discussion, you had Kazuchika Okada, who hopefully he still gets to do this. He was scheduled to carry the Olympic torch when the Olympics were scheduled to take place this summer. So this stuff is absolutely taken very seriously, and there's a parallel, I would say. I mean, the history of the way that Japanese pro wrestling developed, my understanding is that it is actually quite different from the way that American pro wrestling developed, in that it does come directly from MMA, in that terms, like whether it's a shoot or not. It actually, there's an MMA promotion, I think it's defunct now, but there was an MMA promotion called Shuto, as in like, we're the real deal, like we're actually fighting because it's an MMA promotion, which meant that was sort of the MMA promotion that broke away from pro wrestling, went this way, MMA went this way, but ultimately the history is exactly the same. They come from the same thing here in Japan. So of course there is a lot of crossover in the history and stuff. I'm still going back through the annals and trying to figure this out myself because I find it fascinating. But I mean, I hate to say it in a certain way, but if you look at a lot of the very, very traditional Japanese martial arts as well, like you don't want to look at Aikido too closely if you're looking for something that is real, but people are absolutely invested in it. It's a martial art. So if you're going to look at pro wrestling, like it's a martial art. Sure, it's, there are certain elements that are predetermined, and maybe that guy's gonna do a flip a little bit more dramatically than they would. It's like in Aikido, it's like nobody's out there being like Aikido's fake, and it's like, hey, shh, you're not supposed to say that. But it's they're treated or viewed in very, very similar terms. The crossover from the way that martial arts and a lot of MMA, dare I say, over here needs to be looked at from a different lens than the American stuff. I mean, fixings and certain outside influences are not unheard of in MMA in the Japanese context. So point being, that's a really, really inarticulate way of saying that there is a very, very fine line between Japanese MMA and real fighting and the way that pro wrestling is viewed here in Japan, which is a fascinating difference, I think, than what the American product has become from my limited understanding of it.
Matt, and I also think it's this nice blending of having this open artistic creativity for your persona, and also it being based in really traditional sports training and acumen. I mean, the whole concept of the young lion system and having those guys literally be stripped down and have their head shaven and put in basic trunks and go through this rigorous training just to understand the fundamentals before they even really get to artistically express themselves, is something that is kind of like that way too. I mean, it's based in, that sports tradition and even Japanese tradition of sumo, where we strip you down to the bare minimum. We're going to teach you everything that you need to know so you can be the best and have a good foundation, so then you can move forward. And I think that's kind of the advent of New Japan, is that they base this foundation, and then you have this artistic expression after you've paid your dues. And that just makes a more well-rounded athlete. And I think that by going through all, you know, those rigorous training techniques, and even doing the excursion where sometimes they're literally a fish out of water too, whether they're going to CMLL in New Mexico, or they're going to England and they're going to Rev Pro, or they're coming here stateside and they're with Ring of Honor or Impact or any other North American promotion. It helps them learn styles and techniques and bring it all back to the base where New Japan gets to be better for it. So I think that that's kind of where why I think a lot of people gravitate to it, because they're like, oh, I've experienced that before. Like, I've had to go through this training, or if I had to learn techniques or anything like that. And then you appreciate it because they're really trying to put on a quality product.
Yeah, absolutely. I honestly don't have a lot to add to that. I completely agree with that. I mean, one thing that I also really enjoy about New Japan, again, as somebody with a martial arts background, is being able to sometimes recognize some of the techniques that they're doing. Like, that's a real thing. I don't have to stretch my imagination too far. I mean, I love using my imagination. That's cool too, but it isn't so much of a jump or a mental leap to imagine that would have a devastating impact on your opponent or something. And again, it makes it a lot easier to ride that line of suspension of disbelief. Then if you're getting this constant feed of stuff that is recognizable and is used in a real context or whatever, in an MMA setting, for instance, mixed in with other styles as well. You get the lucha style, you get the I don't know, the really flippy stuff, whatever. I mean, it's kind of, that's a little bit redundant.
The Will
but I'm thinking,
Ospreay,
I was like, and then you get
gymnastics
YOSHI,
routine.
You know? Exactly. There we go. Gymnastics routine. There's a really interesting interaction between those styles, and it is subtle, but it really helps to make this cohesive, strong style that is used in Japan, which is a lot more relatable and a lot more easy, at least for me, to invest in and to believe, which I appreciate as well.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, with everybody trying to use the moniker that we're the alternative to the WWE, I think everybody's run rampant with that almost at one time or another with their promotions throughout the last 10 years. It's nice to find something that genuinely is. And I know that there's a lot of stigma, like you gravitated towards it because of your own personal reasons. I gravitated towards it myself just because I was just tired of the WWE product. And I knew that there had to be something out there to stretch out that would be more akin to what I enjoyed. It wasn't just necessarily, I saw somebody in a Bullet Club t-shirt and I was like, hey, what's that? Which I know that that's a story for a lot of people. And then they go down the rabbit hole, they find New Japan and they enjoy it a lot. But that's kind of where I want to get at with this in general, is that New Japan has a lot to offer for everybody from different walks of life. And if you find that thing that you can gravitate to, if you like a crazy dude with a cat, then there you go. Like, run, grab your Daryl and have a good time, or just at least enjoy it, you know? So there's a little bit for everybody to enjoy in New Japan. And that's why I enjoy it. And so I'm just trying to eliminate the stigma where a lot of people in the North American continent, like I said, they just don't, they're like, oh, dude, you know, I don't get this. What's this event? I don't understand these guys. It's like, dude, if you just turn your brain off for a minute, watch a show, you know, it's going to take a while. It's not New Japan. The one thing that I've learned by watching it over the last few years is it's a very slow cooker recipe. It's not a flash in the frying pan like WWE. Like you said yourself, you went to Wrestle Kingdom, you enjoyed it, but it still took you time to kind of grasp onto it. And a lot of people have trouble sometimes getting the calendar. What would be your argument in regards to New Japan in general? Like, if you were just to sell somebody that's kind of that lapsed wrestling fan that we've been talking about, what would you say to them?
Oh boy. I'd say a few things to them. I don't know. First of all, I don't know, in terms of maybe a jumping off point, I would say that we're a couple weeks in. You can go back and watch it. I would say the G1 tournament is a fantastic time of year to jump in. If you want to see all of the top single players showcasing the best of their abilities against each other and getting invested in those dynamics and the stories that are being told through those dynamics, I would say keep an eye out for G1 tournaments. If you are on the website and you want to go back and like, what match should I start with? Start with some of those. I've learned not to recommend Wrestle Kingdom because that's kind of like recommending the final episode of a massive long TV series. Like, oh man, this finale is going to be great, everybody. Like, don't recommend the finale. So that's my bad. Don't start with Wrestle Kingdom. Start with the G1. That would be my recommendation. As far as it being a slow burn and all this kind of stuff, another criticism or counter argument that I've heard is the difference in that the stories are told in ring primarily rather than with little vignettes and dramas and stuff that play out behind the scenes. Now, I think that stuff is still very, very important. I always do try to catch the promos and things that are caught afterwards because there are little hints that are dropped there. But I think personally, just sitting down and watching a match and watching a story unfold is a lot easier to follow than having to then tune into a different show and then go look for the promos and then find out what did they say to each other at some other point on Twitter, like what's going on. It's there, it's in the ring for you. All you need to do is watch the match, and it's all in the body language, it's all in the facial expressions, it's all in their choice of moves that they use against each other, it's in the counters, it's in the finish, how many finishers did it take, all that kind of stuff tells you what you need to know about those characters. There is no language barrier that you need to worry about because nobody's talking as they're beating the crap out of each other. So some people I know are off put by like, oh, it's in Japan, how can I understand it? You understand it by watching the matches. That's all you need to do. So I would say get your G1 on, go watch those matches. Those are your top players for the season, and just watch the sparks fly because that's all you need to do.
In all honesty, too, it's like I've listened to the English commentary with Kevin Kelly or any of those other guys, but with them not being there for the G1, I think it's a lot more enjoyable to listen to the Japanese commentary, even though I don't personally speak Japanese. But when they pop for a moment and they have that little like trifecta there, especially, like sometimes I'll listen to it with my wife and she'll be like, oh, the girl's like really into it. Like they have the female commentator that kind of joins. It's kind of like, they have one guy on one end, one guy on it, and then she literally calls it down the middle, and you could just kind of see that her reaction, that's when something big's about to happen, when she's very subdued throughout the course of the night. And then if it really rocks her boat, then you're like, oh, wow, okay, I got to stop for a minute and pay attention to this. Like maybe I'm going to grab a drink or running around.
Like, whoa, wait, come on, what's going on?
Okay.
Yeah, like what's happening? I mean, Jushin Thunder Liger, a literal living legend. That's a thing that happens in Japan. Like this guy is a national treasure. This is a real human being. The dude is a national treasure in Japan. So he's currently on commentary, losing his mind about some people. I absolutely love it. Because he tries, I guess he's sort of functioning as the color commentator, but a lot of the times recently during this tournament, it's been so entertaining, so amazing. It's so kind of endearing and heartwarming hearing him just get so excited about what's happening in the ring. So there's that really cool intergenerational thing, like to have a guy like him sitting ringside getting really excited over what these younger athletes are doing in the ring and stuff right now. I guess Jeff Cobb got over real hard with him the other day. That was amazing. He was so excited for Cobb. He's like, Jeff Cobb! Yeah, Jeff Cobb! I'm like, wow, Liger, calm down. I guess Liger likes Jeff Cobb now. I love it so much. I can't catch everything that's going on, but I love their enthusiasm.
No, I mean, it's a gauntlet, regardless if you're living on the current time zone or if you're living abroad, to try to watch all of the G1. Like personally myself, I'll pick a couple handful of matches here and there, or I'll try to pick a block or something like that, but it's just a lot coming at you real quick. And I think that's kind of the nice thing about New Japan is you get these resting periods where you'll get a tournament, you'll get a run, you can enjoy it, watch it, and then you get a little time to have it and kind of miss it almost. That's what was the weird thing about with the whole pandemic thing. But I think what was neat about New Japan fans that kind of sets us aside from other wrestling promotions is the fact that we found ways. What we're doing right now is a perfect example of that. Meeting through Patreons and different accounts and doing that, where literally there is no gas, like, you know, land gap or anything like that. I mean, we had to sync up our timetable to do this interview respectively. But other than that, with the advent of social media, it's to our advantage where we can all connect and interact and participate with these events. I think we were both watching it when ELP, El Phantasmo, was doing his own ringside thing, because he was, you know, he's in Vancouver and he's watching an event in Japan. I'm here in Southern California. You're in Tokyo. Like that's the thing that I enjoy about New Japan, where it's a little bit different when we're all connected. We all have a passion for something that's a little bit more heightened than the average fan. And we come from different walks of life. And that's what I really want to try to get across with this. So I really appreciate your time. I know that this is the morning for you. This is the afternoon, evening for me. So just really enjoy the fact that, you know, I know a lot of people are always gun shy and getting in front of a camera and talking about something that they enjoy. But thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for giving me the platform. I don't get the opportunity to talk about this stuff very often. And it's been wonderful meeting people who are way more knowledgeable about it than me, and who are willing to indulge me in this. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, no, please. You're welcome back anytime. Hopefully we have some other stuff to talk about down the road. But I think this was a great interview. Once again, cannot thank you enough. I know that we kind of had to plan this out weeks in advance. So thank you everybody for watching. As usual, if you are a New Japan fan to this channel, please like this video. Please share it with your other friends, family members, people that are those lapsed fans that we discussed about. I'm really trying to get New Japan on the forefront of this wrestling conversation, because there's a lot of people claiming to be the alternative. There's a lot of people claiming all these things. But at the end of the day, my argument is McDonald's has served 2 billion people. But are those 2 billion burgers really worth quality? Because New Japan is that piece of prime rib that you can enjoy and move on and just have a good time with it. And when it comes back stateside, go to a show. You won't regret it. You'll have a great time. So once again, thank you for watching, and we'll catch you on the new one. And always keep it too sweet.